Why is it so important to become familiar with the great Jewish sages of history? Those who study Yeshua ben Yosef HaNazaret and are not familiar with the sages who came before and after him will be forever studying the Torah in a vacuum, with their learning pinned down within an inflexible boundary. Christianity's mishandling of Yeshua's true persona and its horrific misconduct toward the Jews throughout the centuries has caused Judaism and many of its leaders to ignore or denigrate him. But this rejection is based on a mythical version of the actual man himself. What should bother us more? The complete replacement of Yeshua's identity and mission, or the Jews' rightful rejection of that false persona? Rebbe Yeshua said himself that whoever trusts in his ways and does the same work as he did will do even greater things than he. Was he a liar? Certainly not. But if you can't appreciate the achievements of many Jews who loved the Torah throughout the centuries, including Yeshua himself, you'll be blinded to the onset of many more great heroes that will also emerge on the scene in the last days. It's time to get serious. There is a whole landscape of the workings of the Ruach HaKodesh out there, and they all await your discovery. In this episode, we are going to look at Rabbi Yisrael ben Eliezer, known as the Baal Shem Tov, meaning the master of the good name. And he was born in 1698 in Okop, which is a small village in Ukraine on the Polish-Russian border, and died in 1760. The title Baal Shem was known at the time as a Jewish amulet maker. In those days, a Baal Shem would write a message and place it in a small amulet. It might be worn, hung on a door, or kept near a bed. These would be fashioned and sold to bring about healing, shalom bayit, peace in the home, or enhance a person's mazel, which is the biblical equivalent of luck. In many ways, these were similar to the mezuzah affixed to the doorposts of Jewish homes. Out of all the sages that I've studied, the Baal Shem Tov is one of the most enigmatic. Like so many other sages, he left few, if any, material and spent years in hiding and worked quite a few unassuming jobs. But he has arguably the greatest collection of miraculous stories attributed to him than any other among his peers. Rabbi Shlomo Rabinowitz of Radomsk declared, "Whoever believes all the miracle stories about the Baal Shem Tov is a fool, but whoever denies that he could have done them is a heretic." There are so many legends about this man that anyone who embarks on studying his life will be enthralled and captivated by the Torah and the potential effect it can have on a person if they throw their full intellectual and emotional effort into its depths. If someone anywhere along their Torah learning begins to take an interest into the Baal Shem Tov, they will find their own goals more achievable. The Baal Shem Tov founded the Hasidic movement and permanently transformed the landscape of Judaism for all time. But before we get started, I think it's very important to establish what Hasidism is. The Hasidic movement began in the 18th century as a religious revival, and it's the first modern Jewish Reformation that we see. And at the time, it was looked upon by normative Judaism as a very rebellious entity, striving to challenge the status quo of Judaism of its day. The movement brimmed with a vibrancy and enthusiasm that drew thousands of followers in its formative years. Today, it is the largest and most influential demographic in the Orthodox Jewish world. The majority of Orthodox Jews today are Hasidic. But what does this strange word mean? A Chassid singular means piety, and Hasidism plural means pious ones. The word piety comes from the Latin pietas, which means devout or good. The Hebrew rendering chassid particularly refers to religious devotion acted upon through the character traits of virtue and humility. David HaMelech refers to himself as a chassid in Tehillim 4:3 or 4:4 depending on your translation, where it says, "Be aware that Hashem has set aside the devout one for himself, and so Hashem will listen when I call to him." In this verse, the words devout one have been translated from the Hebrew chesed as it reads, Udu ki hiflo Adonai chesed lo. Ultimately, the word means to go beyond and above, which is interesting because Rebbe Yeshua HaNotzri also taught his followers to go above and beyond in many of his own teachings. Rabbi Yisrael lived a simple life, taking on many unassuming roles. One of his jobs was to collect Jewish children and take them to and from school. He would later relate that he took great pleasure in accompanying the children, using this opportunity to recite prayers with them and tell them Torah stories. During the day, he would clean up the local shuls. He also dug and sold clay for a living. The Baal Shem Tov married very young, but he was also widowed very young, and married a second time to a wealthy woman named Hannah. When he arrived to visit his future wife, his future brother-in-law met him at the door, and thinking him a poor beggar, he went to give him money, but was told that he was to marry his sister on his recently deceased father's heartfelt request. Hannah was so righteous that she not only married him, but also assisted with his profession in digging clay, delivering it to clients and so on. When he was 36 years old, in the year 1734, he revealed himself to the world, gaining a solid reputation as a holy and pious man, though he did have his detractors. He had a joyous spirituality and exuded an inspirational wisdom, leaving in its wake countless stories of healing and showing that Hashem was in every aspect of life, not just in the ritual observance of the synagogue, but in such things as a solitary leaf on a tree or a rock. While his contemporaries focused on achieving Torah of the mind, he focused on achieving Torah of the heart. He taught that simple Jewish farmers could connect with Hashem on the same level as full-time Torah students in venerated study halls, and the greatest Torah scholar and the most simple Jew are loved equally by Hashem. The Baal Shem's life and teachings became so legendary that some questioned his existence at all. In the 1990s, a researcher named Moshe Rosman researched his life, and whilst looking for evidence of his life in Poland, found it, finding tax records and real estate purchases and contracts with Rabbi Yisrael's name attached. The Baal Shem Tov lived in Medzibis, running a shul there with a significant number of followers, and yet he was by no means a traditional Talmudist, being poorly educated himself, but he had an amazing sense of morality and love for his fellow Jew. This alone inspired people because at the time, after many upheavals and pogroms, the Jewish nation was in a state of decline, and here comes this man taking an interest in simple folk and sharing with them deep Torah concepts, endearing him to the common man. When the Baal Shem Tov's father lay on his deathbed, he called him to his side and said, "Fear no one but Elohim. Love every Jew with all your heart and soul, no matter who he is." This no doubt was what guided his perspective and drew him so much acclaim. So this is a man who did not have the status of lineage, he was not wealthy, and he possessed minimal education, and yet he made such a strong impact on his community and the whole Jewish world. After the Baal Shem Tov's passing, he left two principal students who continued in his teachings, one of which was the Maggid of Mezrich, who opened 5 different schools of Hasidic yeshivot, all teaching his Rebbe's unique approach to love every Jew despite their station in life, and disseminate his mystical philosophy of Torah to anyone who wanted to learn. Hey, before you go, if you like this series and you want to find out much more, check out our books, All Lights On in the Master's House, Lightning from the Master's House, Flying Chariot, Fallen Dragon, and Is Alcoholic. All available on Amazon.com and other online bookstores, and help us to continue to spread the word. Also check out our website, Netzarim, where we have many teachings and resources on a myriad of subjects that will enlighten and enhance your walk. Bye for now.